Well now, let's move closer in time. What are these attributes of the postmodern? One, a layering of language. Nothing is what it seems. At the same time, there are many, many meanings that the viewer can extract from whatever is put in front of him or her. A layering of meaning. Collaboration. Collaboration between a number of people, not in that totalizing collectivist sense, which was often so destructive and boring in earlier experiments. I'm thinking, for example, of the Bauhaus. There was a totalizing view of what constituted style. The idea that society could be homogenized into, not into all its variety and richness being held together through a multiplicity of connections, but by rendering everything into the same frame, reducing everything. With layering, but also questioning and using new concepts of time and memory. And then there's the question of technology. Well, for my part, I must say there are a variety of ways in which postmodernist artists are working. But for my part, and those artists I'm most closely associated with, this amounts to something which we call telematics. As you know, Simon Nora created the Turing report, the President of France, on the implication of the convergence of these two very powerful technologies, computers and telecommunications. What the President of France asked him was, what happens? We know about computers and what they're doing to society, and we've seen for many, many years about telecommunications and what that does to society. But what's going to happen when these two things, the question was asked in 1978, of course, what happens when these two things converge? Now, Simon Nora's book, Computerization of Society, was tremendously powerful in its effect. Certainly on me, on the artists, certainly on business in France, not least of which was the icon of that development, enthusiasm, and energy, of course, is the Minitel service, which, as you know now, is another medium. Just as TV replaced cinema, and cinema replaced photography, as I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name, Turing's man, the author of Turing's man, he used that phrase, a defining technology. The camera was a defining technology in the 19th century. The cinema in the earlier years, TV, the defining technology of the 50s and 60s and 70s. But now, surely it is the telematics system, this convergence of computer and telecommunications into interactive networks, which is the defining technology of our culture now. And Minitel, of course, is that now so much so a part of French culture. You travel on the subway, on the underground in the metro in Paris, and where you will see, for example, horses charging across the turf, and you see, what is it, 7 digits. You just know by the configuration of those numbers that there's a new program, there's a new game to be played, there's a new source of information, there's a new database or whatever, and a data bank. In Minitel is a medium which you instantly recognize in France in the metro. Just as you would simply recognize a telephone number and you saw a picture of 46 ice creams in different flavors, you saw the picture of the ice creams and cones and a telephone number, and you know that you just ring that number, you get information. So with Minitel. But of course, Minitel is interactive, and that is really where I want to begin now, because many artists now in the world are exploiting telematic systems. I just want to describe to you a little bit in what way. This is IP Sharp. Some of you may use IP Sharp. Well, it's expensive, but we get special rates as artists. There's still a few things left in the world for artists in that way. It's simply a time-sharing system. It provides, amongst other things, electronic mail. There's a special user group of artists, about 30 of us, who are constantly in communication. And in the early years, we used it to textual artworks. Of course, you recognize the international scope of the network. You recognize that from the artist's point of view, it's a wonderful system, because for the price of a local telephone call, in the United States that means nothing at all, and in Europe just a very, very low cost, one can log into that system and be instantly in communication with artists all over the world. What does that mean? What it means is, for a start, that a whole variety of cultural attitudes are available to the artist. We try to exploit that in a project, just to give you an example, called La Pleisure du Texte, the pleating of the text. Actually, it was a sort of a reference to the plaisir du texte written by Roland Barthes. In other words, we wanted to play with text. We wanted to play with text because in 1983, I think it was, that's all we could play with. Because playing with images, as you know, at that stage was extremely expensive. We're able to play with images now, thanks to the dispensation, I suppose, of IBM through EARN, European Academic Research Network. Otherwise, that too would be prohibitively expensive for us as artists to become engaged in. But at that stage, we were playing with text, and the pleating of the text. We wanted to take textual inputs from artists and creative people in a variety of locations around the world to weave together a fairy tale. Why a fairy tale? Well, it's the most basic narrative form that one can have. And it's open to such interpretation that you can pack it densely with political, poetical, scientific, all kinds of insights and allusions and references. What I did simply, we held a touring exhibition called Electra, which was an examination by Dr. Frank Popper of all the ways in which electricity and electronics have been used as media in art in the 20th century. It's a huge exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in Paris. This particular project was one where I had simply a terminal there online to IP Sharp network with a data projector so that the image could come up good and bold for everyone to see, and had ascribed to 13 people in Vancouver, Honolulu, Sydney, Australia, Vienna, Paris, Vancouver, Toronto, New York City, a role in a fairy tale, like the Prince was in Pittsburgh, the Wicked Witch was in Sydney, and so forth. And to ask artists and whoever they would work with, bring together, to develop the text from the point of view of that character. But of course, they would put a bit of text in, it would zap into the central computer in Toronto, it would sit there until the wise old man in Honolulu came online. As he came online, all that text would come up before him, and then that group would add to that. So the story would be developed. There you see, it became a performance piece in Sydney in the Museum of New South Wales. But it could also be operated privately. That's Robert Adrian there, who has worked from Vienna for many years, developing these systems as well. Can be used in offices, in the studio with a portable terminal, or can just put it on the phone. So artists could operate over a variety of locations. That was up in Alma, Quebec,